Hello, it's Harold McGee here with a few extra words on this week's topic. And the subject this week is elasticity, which comes down basically to how materials behave when you apply a force to them. That is to say, it has to do with food textures. And you're going to be talking about quite a range of foods and textures, things from steak to strudel to candy, chocolate, sauces. They're all manifestations of physical properties of the food, and elasticity is one of those. Now, when we eat, we put food in our mouth, and we then apply force to that food. We use our teeth to break things up into small enough pieces to swallow, and we use the tongue to move things into place for chewing and swallowing, but also to perceive and interpret the physical behavior of the food, which can be all sorts of different textures. If the food is liquid, then it can be thin or thick or slimy. If it's solid, it might be hard or soft or crumbly or malleable or stretchy. And foods are generally combinations of all of these different qualities. So the mouth is a very sensitive analytical instrument for food structure. And by the way, it's not just the teeth and tongue. Chewing hard foods generates vibrations, and these vibrations are conducted by the jawbone to the skull and to the ear, where they're detected as sound. And it's the sounds that foods make when we chew them that lead us to call them crunchy or crispy. Crispy foods make sounds that are especially rich in high frequencies. Now, we know all this thanks to an ingenious experiment that was done at Oxford University several years ago. The experimental subjects put on sound-blocking headphones, and they sat in front of a microphone, and they bit into potato chips. And the sound of the biting was picked up by the microphone and processed in various ways before the sound was then passed back to the eater's ears through the headphones. So when the chewing sound was sent to the headphones unchanged, the eaters rated the chip as normally crisp. When the sound was amplified, they rated the chip as more crisp. And they also rated it as more crisp when they just amplified the high frequencies of the sound. So we use both touch and hearing to judge food textures. Now, texture is often the quality that's hardest to get right in cooking. It's just as often the source of liking or disliking as flavor, and often even if the flavor is fine, if the texture is off, then we just don't like the food. And basically, I think we want food materials to resist the force of our teeth and our tongue, but not too much. So if a food is completely fluid, then it's boring. It just kind of goes right down. If it's hard and solid, then it's too much work to chew. And it seems to me that it's not just laziness that wants us to kind of hit the sweet spot in there between complete fluidity and obnoxious hardness. It's not just laziness that makes us want to avoid working too hard when we chew. There is an eminent anthropologist at Harvard named Richard Wrangham, who has been writing for a couple of decades now about the idea that the invention of cooking probably had a profound effect on the evolution of the human species in many different ways, but above all in the ability to provide enough nourishment for our enlarging brains as our ancestors were developing into modern-day humans. So he has written about this in his book, How Cooking Made Us Human. And he points out that chimpanzees in the wild spend more than 6 hours a day chewing their foods, which include fruits and leaves and nuts and a variety of things. And he says that the amount of time that an animal spends chewing at least among primates, depends on body size. So we can estimate how long humans would have to spend chewing if we lived on the same kind of food that chimpanzees and other apes do. And he estimated that it would be about 40% of the day, or about 5 hours of chewing in a 12-hour day. He compared this figure with studies of eaters in the United States, and these studies found that people spend between 5 and 10% of their time chewing. So much less time chewing than the other great apes do. And of course, cooked foods are generally easier to chew, not necessarily always softer, but crisp things are easier to chew than chewy things. They're easier to chew, their nutrients are more easily extracted and absorbed, and so we get more nourishment for the short time that we actually eat. So, thanks to cooking, we save ourselves a lot of chewing time and a lot of energy, and that leaves us with more time and energy to explore the world and think and learn about things, like the physics of food texture.